at davejanda.com. My next guest is someone I consider a friend and someone who is incredibly courageous. He has been fighting the deep state for many years. They despise him. They will do anything in their power to try to suppress and censor the information that he provides on a daily basis, either through his YouTube channel, X22 Report, through his website, X22Report.com. He recently had me on as a guest on his Spotlight channel, on X22 Spotlight Report Spotlight channel. We delved into a number of different issues, and it's my honor to welcome back my friend, Dave, the founder and force behind the X22 Report. Dave, welcome back to Operation Freedom.
Well, Dave, thank you very much for having me back on. I really appreciate it. And I like coming back. I like coming on the radio show. I think we have a good time. We talk about a lot of different things. And once again, thank you very much for having me on.
So, Dave, there were some folks that got pretty upset with me this morning. But the tweet I put out this morning has actually gone viral. And here's what I put, and I want your take on it, and we'll take it from there, and your take about the COVID situation with the President and First Lady. I put medical breaking news. This past week, China's coronavirus has apparently mutated. It can now differentiate between Republicans and Democrats, and it is even more contagious to Republican members of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the White House staff working on the re-election. That now has close to 100,000 impressions. Your take, Dave?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think this virus is a very, very smart virus. Because the virus knows between a rally and a protest, so it knows who to infect and not to infect. And the same thing goes with what your tweet just says. During the debates, during everything else, it seems that the Republicans were infected and the Democrats were not, because we have a list of 26 names here of people who came down with COVID. Senator Ron Johnson, Ronna McDaniel, of course, the president, the first lady, and many other individuals. I think there's a list of 26 people. And these individuals, they're all now diagnosed with COVID. So when I see this, and I understand what your tweet is saying, how smart it is, when I look at this, I understand that the president understands COVID-19. He also has his Operation Warp Speed. He knows how to protect himself. His staff knows how to protect themselves. He talks about HCQ quite a bit. He understands how to prevent this or to make sure that he doesn't get it as he's traveling around. He normally doesn't wear a mask, and he's tested all the time. I think from everything that we're seeing is that this was part of the deep state playbook. And he always knows their playbook. He knows what they're going to do next. He's always 10 steps ahead of them. And I do believe that he knew that something like this was going to happen. I think he used this to his benefit. Do I mean that he wanted to be sick? He wanted to get COVID? But he understands that COVID has like a 99.999% recovery. Now, depending on the age, yes, I know there's 0.997, 0.996, but he understands that people do recover from all of this. That we're seeing right now, that the virus is real. It's the news around it, the push that the mainstream media, the corrupt politicians are using right now to push their agenda forward. That's the fake part of it, and the virus is real. Now, what I find very interesting is that this entire time, all the mainstream media has done is they've continually pushed out the idea that he hasn't saved anyone, 200,000 plus people have died. And we know that the CDC, they reworked the numbers, and they said, well, it's really about 6% that actually died from COVID-19. People might have died who had COVID, but that's not what they died from. So only 6%, they're saying, actually died from COVID-19. And what he has done with this is that now he has completely changed the narrative. He is now part of those people who had COVID. They can no longer say, well, wait a minute. You've been saying that this is a hoax. He could say, well, I've never said it was a hoax. I have it. It's not a hoax. But the news around it is the hoax, is the deep state agenda. And he's always been mentioning the project that he's working on. It's called Warp Speed, where he's trying to produce a vaccine or produce therapeutics. Now, what's very interesting, since he started Warp Speed, the mainstream media, Bill Gates and others, they have been out there saying, we don't really trust the FDA right now. We don't really think you can create a vaccine in such a short period of time. He's turned them around now and made them anti-vaxxers. Don't trust the FDA. Don't trust the vaccine. Don't trust any of this stuff. But if you actually listen to what Trump has been saying, he's leaning more towards the therapeutics. And when you look at disease and you look at all this, you really don't need a vaccine if there's maybe a cure for the disease. And I think this is the direction that he is heading in, because I noticed the White House, they're continually putting out statements saying that he's trying this therapeutic, he's trying remdesivir, he's probably trying other therapeutics. And I think in the end, what's going to come out of this is that he's going to say, this is what I used, this is what helped me, this is what got me out of all of this. And I think this is playing right into his plan.
I agree with you. And one of the other things he points out, he said on numerous occasions, well, wait a minute, this whole AIDS situation is under control and there's no vaccine for AIDS.
That's
right?
True.
And again, it again fuels the fire that you've outlined, that there is really this push for therapeutics.
Yes, I think that's the direction he's heading in, because he understands that he already got, I should say, Bill Gates, the mainstream media, already to question vaccines, but they haven't touched therapeutics. They don't even mention therapeutics at all. He's been mentioning therapeutics. Actually, the video broadcast that he just put out there, the message that he gave the American people is that he's on different therapeutics and, he's getting better and it seems to be working. So he even, in his video broadcast, he mentioned therapeutics. But what I find very interesting about all of this is that we know that he has a Supreme Court nominee, and with all these people coming down with COVID, you could see part of the agenda right here. They want to stop the confirmation process. They're trying to stop him at every turn. So this is just something else that they can use, because they knew there was plenty of time for him to nominate someone, get someone into position to be confirmed, and have them before the election. Now, what is the mainstream media, the corrupt politicians, the Ds, what have they been trying to do this entire time? They don't want this confirmation. Remember, I think all of this has to do with the election. Everything that he's doing, he's trying to put everything into place to prepare all the countermeasures for this election. And I think the deep state, they're using the pandemic, they're using the protests, they're using the riots to create this entire chaos type of period for the elections. And this is why they want mail-in voting. They're using the pandemic for that. They don't want people going to the polls because you can manipulate the election with mail-in voting. They're trying to use the riots to scare people away from going to the polls. They're going to even use, I think they're going to use the riots even after the elections. I think there's already a group out there camping out at Lafayette Park, right in D.C., prepared and ready to go. So on one side, you have the deep state where they're preparing everything for the election to create chaos. The other side, you have Trump, where he's using countermeasures. He has many lawsuits going right now in many states about mail-in ballots. He has the Warp Speed project, where he continually mentions that he wants some type of vaccine or some type of cure to come out right before the elections. He says, yes, maybe sometime after, but he really thinks there's going to be something beforehand. He also has the Supreme Court nomination he wants confirmed before the elections, because if you go back to Bush and Gore, he's going to need the Supreme Court to maybe make a ruling just in case there is chaos or something goes down. I think all of these are countermeasures. He's countering everything the deep state is trying to do with the elections. And I think all of this, everything that we're watching, this entire show, all comes down to the election. And I think the deep state players, the mainstream media, just like when they came out with the idea that the riots were a myth, they don't exist, and then all of a sudden they had to backtrack on that, and they said, hey, listen, okay, the riots do exist, maybe Biden should come out and say something about the riots. I think they have their own internal polls. The polls that we're receiving, that's to shape a narrative. They have their own internal polls. Trump has his own internal polls, and they check to see what's happening. They looked at the polls. They saw people aren't buying what they're selling. People are seeing the riots. It's not working for them, and this is going to be a disaster. The same internal polls that they're not giving to the people also show that there's going to be a landslide for Trump. I mean, look at the rallies. Look at Walter Reed Hospital. Look how many people are out there. Look in Denver, Hawaii. Look at the boat parades, the tractor parades, the car parades. Do you see any of these parades for Biden? Actually, he shows up and there's maybe 6 or 7 people in his rally. I think they already know that this is going to be a disaster for them, and this is why they need the chaos. Because if they were in control, and I'm talking about the mainstream media, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the Ds, if they were in control, they wouldn't need all of this. They wouldn't need to manipulate. They wouldn't need mail-in ballots. They wouldn't need riots. They wouldn't need the pandemic with pushing the idea that we have to stay locked down. If they were in control, you don't need that because you're already in control. The only reason you push these things is when you're not in control. This is why you do this. It's almost like a crying child. I mean, the parent is standing there. The child is crying, stamping their feet, screaming and yelling because who has the real control? The parent does. The child is just acting out. That's what we see right now. The Ds, the mainstream media, they're not in control. They're acting out. Trump, the parent, and the silent majority behind him, we're in control. We're standing there silent. We're watching this. We're observing. We're seeing. And once they get it out of their system, the parent, the silent majority, we're going to then say, this is what's going to happen next. And I believe this is how this is going to play out, where the silent majority on November 3rd, because I do believe this is the most important part of everything that we're seeing, that this is when the people are able to show what they really want. A silent majority who's just been sitting back can scream out in one voice. And I think this is their biggest fear. I think this is what they're afraid of. They know what's coming, and this is why they have to create chaos to drown out the voice, because otherwise it's a landslide. They're done for. It's game over for them.
Folks, we're speaking with Dave from the X22Report.com and X22 Report on YouTube. Dave, as we watch what's happening on social media, as we watch what's happening in the bought-off lamestream fake media, you have all these individuals in the bought-off lamestream fake media, tentacle of the deep state, and they're pushing this fear porn. This fear porn atmosphere about what's happening with President Trump in the hospital. And frankly, I went after Acosta and a number of these people on social media yesterday, saying all you're doing is being an opportunistic deep state fear porn monster. Stop it. You know nothing. These people know nothing about medicine, nothing about healthcare, nothing about taking care of a patient, and they're trying to pontificate. Well, the president's O2 sat was only 96. Really? What do you think Joe Biden's was yesterday? What do you think? What was his O2 sat? I mean, right? It's absolutely off the charts, and I believe they're doing this because you're correct. They're losing. They are losing, and they thought they had something here with him and the First Lady getting COVID, and this is our way to take him down, that he's physically unable to do the job. He's mentally unable to do the job. He can't do, and in fact, he's showing, I'm doing the job even though I'm not feeling the best.
That is true. I mean, think about what they're trying to do. They have to keep this type of news out there. They have to continually say he's doing poorly, he's very sick, he's not doing well, because what amendment do they want to invoke, the 25th? They want to take him out. They want to say, listen, he's so sick that he can't do the job. This is what they've been trying to do from the beginning. Think about what Nancy Pelosi has said, where once he loses the election, we're going to have to drag him out of the White House. Hillary Clinton has said this too. And the mainstream media had many individuals on saying the same exact thing. It all goes back to the same thing. With this COVID-19 with the elections, their main objective, their main goal is to get rid of him. And the only way they can do this is to try to convince the people that he's very sick, he can't perform his duties, and we have to remove him that way. If that doesn't work, we have to create chaos and try to keep the election results from coming out and make it seem like there is no president and we need to take action. And they're trying to project that, listen, once this happens and there's no results and there's no president, we're going to have to remove him by force. They're projecting all this out there, and actually it's going to happen in reverse, just like we saw in 2016. What's going to happen is that all he needs to do is get up to 270 electoral votes. He doesn't need the popular vote. He doesn't, actually, back in 2016, he didn't even win the popular vote. Hillary Clinton did with 3 million votes. He lost the popular vote, but he won the Electoral College. That's the most important thing. That's why they've been trying to get rid of it this entire time. And their main mission right now is, if we don't get rid of him, if we don't remove him, either using the 25th Amendment or with the manipulation to the elections, we're all going to jail, period. Because we could see with Flynn, that case is completely falling apart. People who are watching this and they're viewing and what's happening with Flynn, they're saying to themselves, okay, no one is prosecuting anymore. The Department of Justice doesn't even want to do it. They just want the case dropped. They have no case. Actually, the evidence is pointing to him being innocent. Everything that they've done up until this point with the Mueller investigation, with the impeachment, all of this stuff has not worked to their benefit. It has completely fallen apart. This is the last thing they possibly have to get him out of office, and it's going to fail. And it's going to fail big, and they know what comes after. They know that the case that Durham is working on with all these grand jury indictments, they know he's going to start handing these out. They know that it's just a matter of time. And I do believe that they'll go to the extreme, that they will initiate riots like we have never seen before. I do believe that we're going to see, if people think riots are bad now in Seattle, in Oregon, in New York City, and many other states, California, I think once the elections are over, they're going to push their agenda like we've never seen before. And I do believe this is why there are many military individuals in place around the country, because once this happens and once they designate Antifa, KKK, if you notice, he grouped them together. Once they're designated as a terrorist group, it's insurrection, and he'll be able to use the military, and he'll have nothing to worry about after the election. So I think this is where we're headed right now, and I think both sides are going to push as hard as they possibly can.
Dave, many folks are frustrated that they haven't seen any indictments surface from Barr and Durham. Your take on that?
Well, I don't think they're going to see anything come out, because, remember, this is an investigation. It's a closed investigation. It's information being handed to the grand jury, and this is how a real investigation works. A lot of people believe that we should have seen leaks. We should have seen information come out. No, this is the way the deep state operates. In the past, they leaked all the information out because they wanted to control the narrative of where this was going to go, and they wanted to build up the idea that, yes, here's the investigation and this person's going to be guilty. But in reality, what's happening with Durham is that a real investigation is an investigation where evidence is being brought to the grand jury looks at it, and if these people are innocent, nobody knows about it. Their reputation, everything about the person is not hurt. But if the grand jury looks at the information and they have enough evidence to indict, well, that's when Durham produces the indictments. That's the only time you're going to see all of Durham's work. I'll give you an example. It's like someone losing weight. When they start off and they're overweight and they're starting a diet, you don't see the results. You don't see anything. And over many, many months, if you haven't been paying attention to the person, you don't know that anything's happening. Yes, they tell you they're on a diet. And then all of a sudden, one day, after 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, you see them again. You go, whoa, look how thin they are. Then you see the results. You see everything that they've done throughout this entire period of time. This is just like Durham. From 2017 all the way up to this point, he has been working very hard. He's been looking at documentation. He's been looking at the evidence. And I do believe that every time he looked at something else, it led him into something different, down the rabbit hole, and it got worse and worse. I don't think this is just about treason or spy. I think this has to do with Uranium One, crimes against humanity, email scandal. And as he kept on digging, he found out that all of these things were connected. And he had to dig even further. And the documentation that he found showed a plan, this gigantic plan that he has now put together. So all these documents, everything that he looked at, once it comes out, he and Barr and the rest, they will be able to tell the story and explain to the people what this plan truly was. And I believe that's why we haven't seen anything, because this is a real investigation. There's going to be real indictments. There's going to be real people going to jail. And these individuals, they're not going to be off the hook. And they know it. And this is why they're so panicked. This is why they're pushing their agenda so hard with the election period of time, with the pandemic, with the riots, with the protests, and everything else, because they know that this is all coming out, and there's nothing they can do to stop this. There's nothing.
And Dave, as you look on your radar screen, who do you think those people are that are, quote, on the hook, end quote?
Well, I think the individuals are the low-lying people, and I do believe there's different levels. There's different levels of the deep state. There's those politicians that are instructed to do things. They make a lot of money because they're passed certain laws, like Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, and many others within Congress. And then you have the intelligence crews like Clapper, Brennan, Strzok Page, Comey. They're on a different level. And then you move above that, you have the Secretary of State like Hillary Clinton, Obama. And I think even beyond that, you have George Soros, Rothschilds, and the rest, that those people, they hide behind the curtain. Those people are the true people who are directing where our country goes. I mean, the president, except for Trump, the other presidents, they take orders from the invisible people hiding behind the curtain. They're just pawns in the whole thing. Yes, they make a lot of money from this. Yes, they follow out their orders. But I think this goes much, much higher.